Welcome everyone, this is Tactical Itch here, and today we are back to a domination map on Total War Warhammer 3 Arnhem. But we are not playing domination mode, instead we are playing the hybrid battles with a full 12,400 gold army with no reinforcements. And in my personal opinion, without reinforcements makes the game a lot more exciting and fun, with every tactical decision you make having a lot more stakes to it. Anyways, I will talk about this with a bit more detail in the battle itself. Now let us have a look at the army build. For the Cathay army here, played by yours truly, we have a front line of gold chevron jade warriors, backed up by a single celestial dragon god and a bunch of peasant long spears. In the skies, we have a couple sky lanterns protected by a single great Longma riders. As for the single entities on the ground, we have a terracotta sentinel and Zhao Ming, the iron dragon with the final transmutation, as well as the dragon breath spell. And that's basically it for the Cathay army deployed on the high ground, trying to push for the high ground objective on the Arnhem map, and maybe afterwards pushing through the choke point to hit up objective 1. Now, for the Slaanesh army played by Coops, we have an air force of 4 Chaos Furies, that's basically the maximum number you can bring, and a very wide army of infantry spam marauders with spears mixed in with marauders with Hell Scourges. And on the flanks, we have the Hell Striders of Slaanesh, as well as a single unit of Seekers of Slaanesh accompanied by more Hell Striders, this time with the Hell Scourges providing extra melee defense. Now, of course, if you're bringing Slaanesh, you can't not bring the Seeker Chariots. Very powerful chariots, glass cannon, but with the chariots fixed, they're now an extremely effective unit against the heavy infantry of Cathay, especially stuff like Jade Warriors. As for the leadership, we have a Herald of Slaanesh bringing the lore of Slaanesh, and that's basically it for the army builds. Let's not waste any more time and go straight into the action. With my relatively small army tightly deployed in one position, I am making the push for Objective 3 here, as my opponent Coops rushing all his forces around the battlefield. There are some infantry pushing for Objective 3, and the rest are just rushing towards 1 and 2. With the wide numbers advantage, they can surely occupy this region, and especially with the speed advantage on the light infantry, while my slower infantry, the heavier Jade Warriors and the peasants, and in the skies the slowly moving Sky Lanterns, means that I will not be able to capture these objectives, and that imposes a great problem on my end, because with my push basically tightened and constricted to this high ground right here with all these impassable terrain, without any mobility to push for the lower ground, I am easily bottlenecked if they can move over the forces over here and just pin me down in these choke points. And this is where my mistake weighs heavily into this battle, as in this battle there is no reinforcement, right? And in a normal domination battle, I can simply just pull out some reinforcements here and start contesting these areas, but without the reinforcements to cover up my mistakes, every tactical decisions I made holds a lot more weight to it, and that's what makes the battle fun, with each engagement having much higher stakes than when reinforcements are available. And with my mistake putting myself into this dangerous situation, I need to fight my way out of it. So with the Fairies rushing in, I'm able to just basically 1v2 these units with my great Longma riders. Under that anti-infantry bonus on these elite Sky Cavalry, the squishy Slaanesh Furies are dropping like flies. However, there are more coming in from the side. They're just going straight for the Sky Lanterns, using their armor-piercing attacks to bring down these flying machineries of the Cathay army. While the infantry-wise, I am still rather slow in reacting, as I am not able to push up the forces without pushing up my Sky Lanterns, and also my micro being diverted away from the infantry, giving my opponent a lot of time to capture 1 and 2 objectives, and my units are still busy fighting back all these Furies. Now with the Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon, summoned up into the skies with the dragon form, he was able to now bring down some of these Chaos Furies, and now finally my infantry are moving up, hoping to push for the low ground and high ground. But I was reforming the ranks, hoping to use these Sky Lanterns to provide that harmony effect, but unfortunately, the Sky Lantern, one of them being focused down by the swarm of Chaos Furies, it was a failed attempt. my Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon, and the Great Longma Riders will be focusing down the rest of the Chaos Furies, but that is simply not enough, with a second unit of Sky Lantern being surrounded, swarmed by the Slaanesh Furies, and now routed as well. The Cathay army losing that crucial harmony bonus. And with my slow reaction with the infantry here, my opponent using those lighter infantry is able to now pin in my forces rushing into this bottleneck, while the other forces are slowly pushing up, pressuring my front line and tightening the noose surrounding my formations. And now my entire army is trapped on this high ground, unable to go anywhere other than capturing this objective 3 with the Jade Warriors and the Sentinels. Now let's have a little bit of fast forward there as both armies are slowly maneuvering. I'm sending in some Jade Warriors, the gold chevron ones, to shut down the Marauders, pinning them down, hoping to maintain control to objective 3. This is extremely important right now, as this is my only remaining hope in winning this game. I need to keep a tight control on Objective 3, starting to push for Objective 1, as my opponent Coops right now is controlling Objective 1 and 2, leading ahead in terms of victory tickets. So with a bunch of spells, one of them the Dragon Breath, I was able to nuke some of the Marauders of Slaanesh, tearing out an opening on the choke point and allowing myself to push up some infantry to Objective 1. But this is where the killing blow of the Slaanesh army comes in, with these Secret Chariots ramming through all my heavy infantry. The Jade Warriors might have heavy armor, but it is nothing in front of the armor-piercing Secret Chariots, especially when they come in from their rears and flanks, enjoying that juicy double charge bonus. Though up on the high ground, my troops are still rather busy dealing with a bunch of Marauders. With the Marauders pinned in, I'm using these Peasant Long Spears and Jade Warriors as an anvil, allowing these Longma Riders, despite tattered, to hammer home, dishing out that anti-infantry bonus against the light armored infantry of Slaanesh, while my big damage dealers, the Iron Dragon, the Terracotta Sentinel, are pushing straight for the low ground, flooding down with a bunch of Jade Warriors. At the back we still have some Celestial Dragon Gods and Peasant Long Spears guarding their rears and flanks, preparing for any flanking and rear charging Slaanesh cavalry. So these Hellstrider cavalry will be pulling back, awaiting for another chance to charge into my infantry lines. Now, as for the low ground, the Peasant Long Spears are still pushing another Dragon Breath attack, dishing massive damage to the light armored Marauders of Slaanesh, while the Terracotta Sentinels and the Iron Dragon are basically unstoppable in their melee attacks. But the problem is, my Jade Warriors have taken significant damage in this fight of attrition, while the high ground Jade Warriors are still being occupied by some Chaos Furies taking some armor-piercing damage, and some of these Hellstriders managed to sneak around, going through the gaps of my lines, evading my Peasant Long Spears and getting straight into the backs of these tattered Long Spears, dishing out massive damage and surrounding my Longma Riders, trapping them down on the ground with the help of some Marauders, denying them from taking off into the skies again. Thankfully, I still have some healthy Jade Warriors who are still pinning down the Hell Scourge Marauders. Same goes for the other Jade Warriors, while the rest of the infantry are rushing straight for the low ground, hoping to capture Objective 1 as soon as possible, as the victory tickets is slowly ticking, as my opponent Coops have been maintaining a lead in objective capturing. There are more bodies of Marauders sent into battle by the Slaanesh army. A massive spell, I assume, is the Slaanesh Bombardment, the Shattered Mirrors or something like that, not sure what it's called, bombarding the zone, catching a bunch of my Peasant Long Spears, but also doing massive friendly damage to some of these Marauders of Hell Scourges. Down in Objective 1, Peasant Long Spears are only peasants, and they can only hold so long in battle, wavering under the pressure of the superior Marauders. Zhao Ming, trying to equalize things, nuked the Marauders with a Dragon Breath spell, but unfortunately, the friendly damage also routed off the cowardly Cathay peasants, leaving their leader alone fighting a horde of Slaanesh infantry. And behind Zhao Ming, there are still a bunch of Marauders throwing themselves into combat, pinning in all my infantry support, especially with the Hell Scourges. 42 melee defense, they can hold out decently even against the most elite Celestial Dragon Guards, who are now being distracted by the Hellstriders, unable to push up into the choke point. So without the infantry support, I am struggling to push for Objective 1 right now. The peasants are routing and the Jade Warriors are occupied in Objective 3. With only the Iron Dragon Zhao Ming fighting against a horde of Slaanesh units. Herald of Slaanesh with armor piercing and really good attack stats, surrounded by Seekers, by Hellstriders, Zhao Ming was forced to go back into human form and dump in a massive final transmutation upgraded version, catching a bunch of these units. But unfortunately for me, Koops here did a great job at reacting to my spell using the speed of the Hellstriders moving away from the blob. Due to the limited area of effect for the spell, the other units are no longer being drained of their health. The Herald of Slaanesh only taking minor damage despite my heavy investment of Winds of Magic. So I'll be pulling in the Terracotta Sentinel, giving the Herald a big ol' smackdown and doing massive anti-large damage. But still, this is not going exactly in my favor right now, as Zhao Ming, with that short time being surrounded by all these Hellstriders and Seekers, took massive damage from the melee grind. Though in the high ground, I actually have the upper hand now, with more infantry surviving than my opponent, gaining control, securing this objective 3. But the problem still lies in the lower ground. I need to secure objective 1 and 2 as soon as possible, as my opponent has less than 1,500 tickets to go to victory, and he is throwing everything available to him into this bottleneck, trying to delay my push. I'm winning in terms of the remaining forces, but I'm not getting any headway in the push to Objective 2. Yes, I am slowly capturing Objective 1 with the help of the Terracotta Sentinel and some of my infantry returning as well, slowly taking this capture zone to my hands, but Iron Dragon is still tied down against a bunch of Hellstriders. I'm pushing up the Celestial Dragon Guard, hoping to get into Objective 1 and also evading that Mirror Shard drop from the Slaanesh magic. But right now, the Secret Chariots are still extremely healthy, running amok amongst my Peasant Long Spears and the Celestial Dragon God. Zhao Ming is Rampage, taking some direct health drain damage, and without reinforcements, the grind for the choke point was a lot more unforgiving, with both armies in this late game scrapping together what little forces they have and keep throwing them into this meat grinder. Both Slaanesh and Cathay have sent in their damage dealers, the Sentinels, Iron Dragon, Slaanesh Seeker Chariots, and also the Herald. And finally, the spell of Slaanesh has worn off on Zhao Ming, ending the rampage and giving me back the control of the unit, and he'll be transforming back into his true form, a mighty dragon soaring in the skies. Realizing the Iron Dragon and Sentinels combined are too much for them to deal with, the Slaanesh Herald and the Seeker Chariots decided to run away from this combat. So I'll be able to resume my push to Objective 2, but my opponent here is still having some resources left to delay my push, with the Seekers of Slaanesh surrounding the Iron Dragon and the Herald attacking from the flank. The Iron Dragon is taking massive damage from those hits, and the Herald is not taking that much damage due to some decent melee defense. I'll be pulling in the Terracotta Sentinel, charging straight at the Herald, hoping to pin down the Slaanesh Lord. But just like all Slaanesh Lords, the Herald is slippery and swift on her steed, was able to catch up to Iron Dragon and just keep backstabbing, and this is a massive mistake on my part, exposing my back to the Herald, allowing them to slay my Iron Dragon with those devastating flanking charges and also the lack of melee defense on the rear of the character. And the Herald is yet again slipping away from my grasp. So all I have to push for this second objective is a single Celestial Dragon Guard, and it is really doubtful whether I can capture them in time, with only so many tattered units left. While in the first objective, I'm able to keep the control of this objective, but the Seekers and the Herald of Slaanesh was able to rout off some of my Peasant Long Spears. I'm forced to bring in the Jade Warriors to pin down the Seekers. While in the high ground, the Jade Warriors are still fighting, but they are wavering against a combination of Marauders and Hellstriders. It is basically two tattered units fighting to their death here and seeing who routs first, though the Jade Warrior seems to be holding just fine for now. But here we have the Seekers able to rout off the remaining Jade Warriors, and now moving on to Objective 3 and threatening to break down these Jade Warriors, while the objective is still slowly falling into the hands of my opponent Koops with one objective remaining, as my last of the Peasant Long Spears and the Celestial Dragon Guard reaching Objective 2 in a desperate gambit to capture the objective, but alas, it is simply not enough. And my opponent here, despite losing most of their army's forces, was able to secure victory. GG to my opponent Koops there, with the Herald of Slaanesh bringing a numerous Slaanesh army, plugging in those choke points and trapping my army on the high ground, while they themselves were able to secure Objective 1 and 2 at all cost. Despite the sacrifice from the infantry, they were able to obtain the control with more objectives and at the end leading to victory. And that is why I think that the lack of reinforcement makes the game a lot more exciting. With my early mistake of deploying the army on top of the high ground, I put myself in the encirclement of the Slaanesh troops, and I was in a desperate need to break out of this encirclement, as I no longer have the ability to call out reinforcements to attack from a totally different direction. You can see that every tactical decision in the battle has a lot more weight to it. Every engagement has a much higher stake because you don't have reinforcements to make up for the mistakes you made. So you need to be really careful with every single tactical decision you make, as it is a much less forgiving mode of battle without reinforcements. I suppose CA introduced reinforcement as a mechanic for players to come back from mistakes they make, especially with the units recycling and whatnot. I get that CA wants to make combat a bit more forgiving for newer players, making those mistakes less punishing. But also it makes success a lot less rewarding. For example, you throw in so much resources to kill off your opponent's leader, the Iron Dragon for example, but bam, they just call it in yet again. Personally, I feel that makes the combat less engaging than land battles, where the losses and gains are permanent. If you lose a unit, you lose it forever, and if you kill off your opponent's unit, you'll kill it forever as well. So you'll be much more careful in choosing your battles and trying to get a good engagement out of it. Anyways, let's have a look at the army performances with the Cathay, Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon, and the Sentinel did some great work, dealing massive damage to the Slaanesh army, while the Great Longma Riders were able to basically wreck every single Chaos Fury unit. Although dealing with so much numbers, they themselves were dragged down in the fight, as they only have one unit and can only carry so much. While the Celestial Dragon God took some massive damage from the spells, and in the end, they survived till the endgame, but was not able to carry the army to victory, as their armor piercing is pretty much wasted in a lot of these unarmored troops. While the Sky Lanterns, they just got swarmed by the numbers of the Chaos Furies and unable to provide any harmony buffs to surrounding troops, while the Jade Warriors, after losing that harmony effect, took some massive damage throughout the combat, surrounded by a bunch of marauders and rear charged by the Secret Chariots, while Peasant, well, they're only peasant, so not much to say about them. Overall, my opponent did a great job at flanking my units, especially with the lack of reinforcements. The flanking maneuvers and rear charging actually matters more because, well, rear charging often puts you behind enemy lines. And what else is behind enemy lines? Reinforcements coming out from the deployment zone. So in domination mode, where reinforcements are available, it is much more difficult to pull flanking maneuvers without putting your troops in a greater risk of being flanked themselves and surrounded, trapped behind enemy lines. But without reinforcements, these tactical maneuvers are actually viable. The Seekers and also the Hellstriders, as well as the Secret Chariots, were able to ramrod into the rear and flanks of my troops, able to rout off some of my infantry, and then proceed to continuously cycle charge ping-pong around the battlefield, doing some great damage, while the Marauders, who are deployed in great numbers, they are just basically flooding the battlefield, pinning down my elite warriors with a bunch of bodies, clogging them down in the high ground, delaying them just long enough for the Slaanesh army to secure victory with capture points. While the Chaos Furies, all they had to do was basically swarm the Sky Lanterns and Longma Riders, and after that, their job is basically done. So one of them getting some great value, 900 gold damage value, the others not so much, but still very solid performance, while the Herald of Slaanesh getting around 1500 gold value, able to kill off the Iron Dragon, getting some great damage done throughout the game. And despite the Slaanesh army basically lost in terms of the army forces, I most certainly have more powerhouse units left, and I'll probably win this combat if it was in land battle. But the fact that we need to win with domination capture points means that even if you lose the actual combat, you can still manage to win the battle if you can delay your enemy long enough for yourself to get those victory tickets. And that is exactly what my opponent Coops here did, with the delaying tactic, with the wider numbers advantage on his army. And yeah, that's basically it for today's battle. If you enjoy it and want to see more, be sure to hit the like and subscribe to get notified every time I upload a new video. And if you have any replays that you want me to showcase, feel free to join my Discord or send me an email with the replay file attached. I'll be sure to check them out. And yeah, that's basically it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.